Hey everyone, it's Amanda Radke back for another episode of the Heart of Rural America podcast, the show where we highlight great people doing inspiring things to make this country a better place. Today's special guest is a little bit of a dive in a different direction than we usually do, but I'm so excited to have him on here. He is a former NFL player, an author, business owner, entrepreneur, coach. Don Beebe, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here, Amanda. Thanks for having me on.
That's not even touching the surface, I'm sure, of the bio. I did a very poor job of sharing your bio. But maybe for starters, tell us a little bit about who you are and your career in the NFL.
Well, I'll give you a Reader's Digest view of this, a very short version. I knew at a very young age I wanted to do two things in life. I wanted to play sports, and I wanted to play for God. And it's ironic how God has taken my path to complete obscurity to be in the team's first pick in the 1989 draft, which, if anybody knew my story, that should have never happened. Um, I always say that I didn't play football because of what Don Beebe wanted. I played football because it was God's calling on my life.
Hmm.
It's up to us to find out what that true calling is, and then God just opens doors that are miraculous and incredible things. And for those that love the Lord and live very closely to that, they see amazing things happen in my life. And I've seen it in mine. I've seen it in my son's. He did the same thing, and many other people that I've seen gone down this path. And so it's taken me from, playing with teams in the NFL and going to six Super Bowls, being on six Super Bowl teams, which was crazy. And then after I retired, I knew I still had a calling in sports, and I just didn't want to give that up. And that's why I got into a business called House of Speed that trains athletes. We did that for 23 years. At the same time, I was coaching in high school at Aurora Christian High School in Aurora, Illinois, which is right outside the Chicago area. And then God called me to another level, which was to the college level. And I took the job at Aurora University, and I've been doing that for the last 5 years. So until I can't walk anymore, I'm going to keep trying my hardest to impact people through football, sports, and the gospel.
That's wonderful. Where does your faith
Yeah.
come from?
Well, my parents, my dad, I'll try to say this as quick as possible too, but my dad is a living Abraham. And why I say that is he gave his heart to Christ when he was, 24 years old. He grew up in a very abusive home, just horrific, to be honest with you. Never heard his dad ever say he loved him, and he lived in the same house until he was 18 when he left. Never heard his dad speak to him since he was 10 years old, all the way till he left. For 8 solid years, never heard a word out of his dad's mouth to him. And it was just in abusive other ways. But my dad made a commitment to Christ. And he also said to God, I'm going to raise my kids and change the legacy of the Beebe name. And Amanda, I cannot tell you how my dad, anybody that knows the Beebe family, is completely amazed by how close we are. When I was five kids, and I was 5 years old, two younger brothers, two older sisters, and my mom and dad, seven of us, went to Minnesota for the first time. This will now be our 54th year going, and there will be 62 Beebe family members that will go on this trip now, and nobody's ever missed in 54
Wow.
years. That's tradition, that's family, and that's who we are, and that's the same way I want to coach. So, I take no credit. I was very blessed to have godly parents.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think a lot of us don't think about the impact we can have generationally when we make decisions to live by our faith, that it's not just in your lifetime, but it's things you might never see, the words you can share with someone, or the impact it might have on kids, grandkids, great grandkids, etc., all because you devoted your life to Christ.
Yeah.
Well, you're very modest, though. I mean, tell me about the football career. You won a Super Bowl with the Green Bay
Yeah.
Packers, correct? Tell us about that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if modest is the word. I just know where my gifts come from.
Yeah.
It's not, it was, I have the saying, it's not that hard, but it's not easy. To whatever you want to do in life, it's not that hard. Just go do it, but it's not going to be easy. Right.
Mhm.
And yes, I was fortunate to not only did I play 9 years, I played on two unbelievable teams. the Buffalo Bills going 4 in a row. That's never been done before. 4 Super Bowls in a row. Just had a bunch of great men, high character guys that just loved the game. That was so much fun. The 6 years I had in Buffalo are just some of the times in my life. And then I get to end my career in Green Bay, the iconic, Lambeau Field. If it's funny, everybody complains about the cold and the snow. If I was to do it all over again and I had to choose 2 teams, man, I would definitely choose Buffalo and Green Bay. So I was very blessed to, again, always God's timing. And then to be able to fulfill what I'm doing now, I believe this, that in the world of sports, let's take Philippians 4:13. I can do things through Christ who strengthens me, right? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I think that's one of the most misconstrued scripture in the Bible when it comes to world of sports, because athletes, they read that and they think, oh, dude, I'm gonna have a game now. I'm gonna be the person because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right?
Right.
But they really miss, Paul's whole meaning in that whole scripture was Philippians 4:11 and 12, where he talks about, I've learned and I know what it's like to have everything, and then I know and learned what it's like to have nothing, and then everything in between. I've learned one word, and that one word to me is really success in life, and that's called contentment.
Mhm.
Are you content? And you can only be content if you're in the will of Christ. When you're in the will and you're doing exactly what God called you to do, oh man, there's nothing better. I honestly say this today. I don't think I've ever woke up and say to myself, oh God, I got to go to work. I love going to work.
Mhm.
I love it every day. I love the grind. I love the hours. I love everything about it. And so for me, when you're in that will, man, it's content.
I love it. You're speaking my language. And
Yeah.
some folks listening to the show are probably wondering how this came to be, how you came to be a guest. Full disclosure, this is the first time we're meeting,
Yeah.
but a mutual friend of ours kind of brought it all together. You guys, listeners, know him as Chris Earl from CK6 Consulting. I get to work with him in the Angus business and in life. And I have a surprise for you today. He is joining us on the show. Welcome, Chris
My
Earl.
guy right there, man. That's my guy.
You think I'd miss this?
No, no. Let me just say this, Amanda. Let me just say who we're dealing with here, this Mr. Earl.
Oh boy.
And everybody that knows him, what kind of individual he is, the loyalty and the heart and the compassion and his faith.
Mhm.
Here I am coaching, and he's 17 hours now from Aurora. And my home opener against St. Norbert in 2019, I'm walking out in the field, and who do I see that drove 17 hours just to be there for his best friend in the stands? Because he's got this big cowboy hat on. He's the only one with a cowboy hat on, right? Now you got to be kidding me. He drove. That's what kind of friend this man is right here. They get no
Absolutely.
better, no
Absolutely.
better
And you
than
guys go
yeah.
way back, right? Chris, talk about how long you guys have known each other. Forever.
Yeah, I don't want to take a lot, but I look, anytime I get to see my friend for one, and anytime I get to share about his life, I'm going to take the opportunity. So we go back to, I was 19, 20 years old, and showed up at camp one day, and there was this guy that I had heard about and knew about because we didn't grow up that too far away from each other. And to be frank, he was the fastest white guy I've ever known and still is. And there he is in camp and at Western Illinois University. And I can remember it like it was yesterday where they held the camp, and I met him. And I know a lot of people say this, but it felt like we were best friends since we were kids. Our immediate conversation was sincere. It was frank. It was from the heart of two people that saw life exactly the same way. Now, take that fast forward. He's added to my life. I joke with him all the time, and I've told you this before, man. I'm a better Catholic because of Don Beebe. And that is because I'd really never met anybody really besides my younger brother Duke, that's the priest who you've met, but I've really never met anybody that was so sincere about the Lord and led his life that way and was unashamed of it. Went through the NFL, which is a tough, if you even look at it now, it's even worse. I mean, it's a tough way to maintain your focus on life when you're around humanism, when you're around all these things. But my friend here, Donnie, found a way to change people in that way of life. Everybody I've ever talked to him that played with him, was in the locker room with him, has the utmost respect. They actually act different when they're around him. And I think that's really the point of his life that I think is so vital, important to me, is that he controls the room when he's in the room. And it's not him, it's the Lord. He knows it. I know it. It just controls the room. And I would never bet against him because he's got the Lord's arm, and I would do anything for him. He knows that. And, for, I don't know, what is it, Donnie, now, how many years we can go 2 months without talking to each other, and it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, because once we do see each other and once we talk to each other, it's like it's always been. So I wanted to jump on because I'm excited that two people I'm very excited about have finally met, because, both of you, the world needs you. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. The world needs you're two of the most fearless people I've ever met. And Donnie and I, getting late in our years, obviously we're always looking for those young people that can have the ability and the fearlessness to step up and really take the arrows, take whatever result for the way the Lord wants you to approach life, to take it. And I'm just glad you two finally got a chance to meet, and you're going to become fast friends because you're both the same. And there's no better mentor than Don Beebe. It's documented. It's everywhere. It's people I talk to today that remember us when we work together, own businesses together, and it just never ends. Those people meet people and tell them about when Donnie and I were together, and it's just, we got kids. I do anything for his kids. He do anything for my kids. All my kids know that, if they ever need anything outside of family, outside of blood, it's Don and Diana Beebe, So yeah, just excited you guys got to meet. Good to see my friend.
Yeah, it's good seeing you. Amanda, you got to understand that when Chris and I came out of the locker room at 5'9", 5'10", we put a lot of fear in defenses, let me tell you.
It's so true. It's so true. We were not the most intimidating pair to walk onto a football field. But you know what? I can tell you this. Neither one of us, and if you ask us now, we'll tell you the same. Both of us internally, and maybe me a little more yapping like I like to yap, but we thought we were the best players on the field. We might have not looked that way, but that's the way we played. And we've trained a lot of kids that way. We've told a lot of kids that way on how to approach life. Donnie still does, and still moving people. Because if you're going to get involved in something, this is the most spiritual man, outside of my family I've ever met. And it's also the most competitive person I've ever met. And the combination of those two is biblical. And I think you can't have either and I think when I jumped on here and I was listening, he was explaining that, that's what he looks to inspire people to be. You got to work for it. You got to be competitive. You got to do it on the Lord's behalf. And there's a way to balance it. So I'm jumping off. I've said too much, and I'm looking forward to hearing this when you guys get going on it. And just great to see my friend with my other friend. So.
Well, Chris, before you go, maybe talk just briefly about going from Western Illinois University playing together to doing business. I think people would be really surprised that you were in the sports business for a while before you applied all that competitive energy to the cattle business.
We did. I mean, Donnie was actually an owner of CK6 Consulting at one time, and I was an owner of House of Speed, and we just decided that, maybe not the best business decisions for both of us, but it was the best personal decisions for both of us. It's the one thing moving to New Mexico. I can tell you, the other person on this screen is the number one thing I miss is about moving to New Mexico, is I do miss seeing him every day. And I miss being around him and conquering challenges and doing all the stuff that we did and coaching together and affecting young people's lives. And he said it didn't feel like we were working. It just felt like two friends that were trying to accomplish God's will and put it in a business setting at times, but still accomplish his will. It was always still our number one thing. And we we lost a lot of money on some stuff, trying to accomplish his will, and still do. And what else? There's no other way God would have it. So it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Maybe one day it'll wrap back around and he'll be in a house next to me on the ranch. But however it works.
Show is over, Don. We're going to be all working together again. I'm not going to beg for this, right? Like it's happening. Don doesn't know it yet, but it's in the works.
Well, I think one thing he really brought, and I never really thought about life about this way until I met Donnie, was, if the good Lord gives you that last, and we've talked about this a lot, me and him, if he gives you that grace, and cancer can be that grace, some of that things can be that grace to where you really get to look at your life. What did I leave it at his feet? Did I accomplish? Did I lay wasteland to a life? Did I live it to its fullest? Did I give everything it was? And can I go to the Lord and say, there it is, Lord, I gave it my all. And if you have that point at the end of your life to look back, and I think that's the way him and I have looked at our relationship. We want it all. We want to do it all. We've done it all. There's still more to do. And whatever the Lord leads us to do, that we're going to do. So
I will add to this, is the relationship and the friendship that this guy and I have is rare. It's very rare. You don't see the commitment that two individuals have. Man, you don't even see it really in marriages today, for crying out loud. It's sad. But I know this, and him leaving, just so you know, when he left, it was hard on both of us, in our wives and our families, because we were very close. However, I look at it as he does. We got eternity together. We're gonna be here 80 years, maybe. And what we do in those 80 years is such a small dot on eternity, you can't even see it. So the big picture is how many people can we affect in that short 80 years? That's the way I look at it. That's the way he looks at it. So let's go do what God's called us to do, whatever that is. Okay. And, and then we'll fish and golf and do whatever we want and spend eternity together, whatever that picture looks like. I know that we'll be there. So that's what drives me. That's what drives him, is just affecting people through cattle, affecting people through football, sports, and whatever that is. So will we ever reconnect in the business world? I'm all for it. I know he is. And if that happens, great. I just know that whatever we do and whatever it is has to impact people for his kingdom, or we're wasting our time. And I don't like wasting my time.
I love it. Well, Chris, thanks for popping on. It's a good reminder too. You're stronger when you surround yourself by believers who are strong in Christ and their understanding of what we're trying to do here for kingdom work for eternity. So you both.
Christ sent his disciples 2 by 2.
That's right,
Amanda. That's right. My 2. That's my 2, right there.
Absolutely.
So,
well, thanks for hopping on, Chris.
Yeah, good to see you, Donnie.
All
right, love you too. See you.
All right.
Yeah, he wanted to surprise you. So
that was awesome.
Could you see him in the back or no?
Oh,
you could.
Oh yeah.
I've never had a surprise guest before, so I didn't know if you'd be able to go in the waiting area. But you acted like you were a pro there. Well, that was fun. So I guess for the listeners here, it really does kind of come full circle. So Don, I know you're a speaker, you're an author. When I met Chris Earl a few years ago now, I'm a speaker as well, and I know I was starting to really share my faith and get a little bit more bold. And I had people in my ears saying, oh, if you do that, you won't get as many speech invites or you'll alienate people. And with his help, I really realized it takes courage to live boldly in your faith, and the Lord can give and the Lord can take away. And my conclusion in all of it was, I really doubt the Lord gave me a voice or a platform to talk about cows all day long, but I'm guessing maybe he gave me an ability to write and speak so I could talk about what he's done through my life, and also knowing he could take it all away. It's not me, it's him. And so I better use those gifts for what they really mean. And that's what I see you're doing. So you have a new book out. Talk to me about that new book and what it's all about.
Yeah. So, First of all, when I got into the league, I never thought I was a book guy or a movie guy. I mean, those are for, Jim Kelly and Brett Favre's of the world. But it's evolved into that. After going to 6 Super Bowls and being a part, and then my whole story is crazy. It resulted into 6 Rings from Nowhere, which is the first book that I wrote, autobiography about the whole life story. I actually just signed an agreement. This is now a different group that I've been working with. I don't even know if Chris knows this yet, but I just signed a new agreement last week to do the movie. So they're in the process right now. We have big meetings coming up here in May on the movie. My whole thing, Amanda, going into both projects, that if this is all about you and me and making money and being famous, I said I have no reason to be in that. I said, but if it's everything to share my faith in the gospel of Christ and giving me a platform to speak to people about that, I'm all in. Okay. And it's been great. So this whole book, which is the second book called Never Give Up, which is kind of apropos to everything that, as far as the play of Leon Let play, which we'll talk about later. But, I was approached by this company down in Nashville that wanted to publish a wide receiver book. Now, my daughter works at this company, Caitlin, my youngest, in Nashville. And so this is how it all morphed into this project. And so I said, yeah, I could do a wide receiver book. And it's been talked about for years. And matter of fact, Chris and I had talked about this years ago as well. And I was literally halfway through writing this thing. And I'm like, am I really going to impact people through wide receiver, or really what I want to do? I mean, it's great. And it would have been fun to do, and it's fine. But I was literally halfway, and I'm on the phone with Caitlin, my daughter. I'm pulling into a BP gas station. And it was like, God just hit me over the head with this whole concept of never giving up devotional. And it literally came within my head within minutes as I'm talking to my daughter. And I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
And so I told her, I said, hang on a second. And I put the gas thing back in the thing, and I was getting back in my car. And I said, God just revealed to me what I want to do. We're going to put wide receiver book on the back burner. I said, God just said devotional, athletes devotional. And I was like, there's been devotionals all over. Everybody's got devotionals. Matter of fact, in the athletic world, there's athletic devotionals. There's a lot of those as well. But nobody I can recall has a former athlete that played at the professional level has wrote a devotional on their life stories that God took them through and put it through scripture. I said, honey, that's what we're going to do. And I literally sat down that night, and over the next week and a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, and it just was flowing out of me, these words. I mean, it was just awesome to do. And then having heard the creative part behind it and the marketing behind it was just the icing on the cake. Well, it resulted, and it came out last Monday, in 12 different stories that God took me through on, for example, contentment, doubting, faith, knowing God's will, keep suiting up when you want to quit. All these things that God gave me stories that I put into 12 devotionals. And Amanda, it has been incredible. We had a 4-day campaign on it, and it was overwhelming, to be honest with you.
Wow.
And it's been great. And all really it is, again, is just showing athletes how to live their athletic world through faith. And how do I put faith to doing that? Because think of different scenarios, like coach gets on me and he doesn't like me. My parents are driving me crazy. I want to be the man, and I can't be content with just being a bench warmer. I just go on and different things that athletes deal with, the pressures of performing. And I put those, because you know what? I felt all those too. Every athlete that ever suits up feels these. And, we're talking about athletics. This can apply in your world as well. You just never feel like you measure up, or it's always pressure to do this. And I just share how God revealed to me through scripture, and I back it all up with scripture. And I end everyone in a prayer, and I pray with them. And then I give them an area that they can kind of write down their thoughts of what God's dealing with them on this. And it's just an outstanding book, and I'm really, really happy with it because it was God's words, not mine.
I love it.
So yeah, it's been great, Amanda.
Well, I'm excited to get it. There's an audiobook as well, and I'm really looking forward to listening to it with my kids, because a
Yeah.
lot of things, I've got 3 young wrestlers, and my oldest son had a really tough year wrestling. He's young. I
Yeah.
mean, he's 7, so
Yeah.
it gets
Sure.
pretty hardcore in the little kid wrestling, but he had decided he had a winning season his first year out, so he thought wrestling was easy. First match out of the gate, he gets pinned in like 30 seconds, totally freaks him out, and he decides wrestling isn't worth it if he could lose, and
Mhm.
we really struggled the whole year of like, "You're gonna finish this season, you're gonna keep practicing with your teammates, where you're gonna keep showing up," but I think being able to give my kids advice on how you can apply your faith, how it's a biblical thing, how you can respond to these pressures of life through that biblical lens, because you can get a lot of advice from different folks, different perspectives, motivational, all those things. But if it isn't
Yeah.
through a biblical lens, it often falls flat. And so I like
Yeah.
what you write about the book. You say the ultimate spiritual playbook is not this book; it's the Bible itself. And this is your humble attempt at sharing God's standard for how athletes should train, think, and what their mindset should be. So maybe tell me. I know you have 12 different
Sure.
lessons, maybe more, but maybe give us a story or an example of something during your career that you learned and applied and shared in the book.
Sure. I'll give you I think it's the third one, keep suiting up. And and the thing is this is I first of all, let me just say this before I say that keep suiting up, is you're talking about the playbook. I use the analogy all the time to my football players. If you don't know the plays, you don't know the playbook, you're never going to play here. How
Mhm,
could you, right? You don't know the playbook. Less than 10% of people that go to church, less than 10% of people that go to church read the word. And that's
mhm,
the playbook of life. We don't even know the playbook of life. How are you going to navigate yourself through life if you don't even know the playbook, right? You got to know the playbook. So the third lesson was keep suiting up. And that was a time in my life that was very trying. In my athletic world, I had never been cut before from a team. I never really felt like I didn't fit in with a team, be it high school and collegiately and professionally at Buffalo. So I went 6 years at Buffalo. And then 1995, the Carolina Panthers was a new franchise. And I was a free agent. Okay, I was no longer going to be with Buffalo. And so I had to find a new home. Well, Frank Reich, who was, my roommate at that time, was going there as the quarterback. And I thought, wow, that'd be kind of cool to go to Frank and play with Frank there. And he was always the backup behind Jim Kelly. And I played behind 2 Hall of Famers and James Lofton and Andre Reed. So, to go to a new franchise and them telling me that I'm going to be the guy, I'm going to be the number one guy. He's like, wow, this is exciting. I mean, because that's what every athlete strives for, right?
right.
Well, I go there, and within days, it was awful experience. I mean, I felt like from the coaching staff, my wideout coach and the offensive coordinator just made me feel like I couldn't play. I was brand new rookie. I got MF more times in that season than any other season by far. It was just a horrible experience to the point, Amanda, that I didn't want to go to work anymore. I mean, it was something that and I thought, maybe is God really taking me through this because it's my time to quit playing this game? I mean,
Mhm,
because sometimes God has to take us through things to get us to make that decision. And I thought, no, you know what? I still like this. I love the game, and I still have a lot to give. And so
mhm,
I knew it wasn't that. And I was like, well, then God, what? You brought me here. And I thought, so we always start to question God's motives sometimes, or the decisions that he makes for our lives. And we're like, because we're humans,
mhm,
we're filled with a sinful nature and we're humans. And I'm like, but God, why? And and this is why it's really important to center yourself around godly people.
mhm.
Okay, the Chris Earls of my life, and at that time, being roommates and teammates with Frank Reich. Frank was that guy for me, and we just shared a lot. And really, I went through a process of, was my identity in life really as a football player?
Mhm,
How shallow is that?
mhm.
No, my identity is in Christ and Christ alone. And if it's not that, then who am I really? So it was something, even, and I was strong in my faith and been a believer my whole life, really. So I started going through this process, and it starts off with bitterness,
Mhm.
uh, hateful envy. You didn't want to be there, and every athlete experiences. If you haven't, it's coming.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's coming. Okay, the day's coming, and again, people in life are going to face this. So I had to make a decision. And I think at this point in time, this is where the true believer in God and a strong relationship with that separates themselves with the people that are just kind of going through the motions or have no faith at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because the ones that don't, they're gonna have pity parties. They're gonna have, and then their life just starts to unravel. Okay, and then they never really reach who they could have been, right? But I made the decision of no, you know what? I'm going to pray more. I'm going to read his word more. I'm going to dive into being a better Christian man, stronger Christian man, a deeper faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to let Satan win here. I'm not. And as he said, as being competitive, he's right. I'm very competitive. Okay. Maybe to a fault, but it was a gift. I would look at it as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
So I just said, no, I'm not going to let him win. And so what I did is it's a conscious decision every day. When you get up, I'm going to attack the world. Today, I'm going to go to practice. Okay. And I'm going to ball it. I'm going to do everything I can to just have a great attitude and be a great teammate. And so I did. And boy, did I start feeling better. I mean, I felt more content. I was playing, just great. I was having some of the greatest practices I ever had. But here's the first lesson out of this. Did my circumstance change? No, they did not. I was still said you weren't that good, and I got made fun of, and I just got yelled at and screamed at and MF'd. And I'm like, I'm 29 years old and 7th year in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I still felt being humbled by somebody that was not being a nice person. Okay. But it didn't matter. I was overcoming that, and I allowed God to work. Romans 12:14-21 is some of my favorite scripture in the Bible, where it talks about these aren't your battles. God says, the vengeance is mine. Let me
Mm-hmm.
have it. I will take care of that. Okay. So if somebody's acting ungodly to you, it's okay. Let it go. Let God work in that. Most people never get to that, Amanda. They don't. They got to push the buttons. They got to do the things. They got to fight. They got whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just let God do God. And I just went out and did what I was called to do, play football and have a good attitude doing it. So I did. And I got cut at the end of the year. They called me. Dom Capers called me. And it wasn't Dom Capers, by the way. Dom's great. I love him as a head coach. He called me and said, we're going to release you, Don. Appreciate your time, blah, blah, blah. So great. It was over in Carolina. To be honest with you, I was really happy about that. But where did God take me? He took me to Green Bay Packers. Okay. And not only did he take me to the Green Bay Packers, I had the best season statistically of my whole career that year in Green Bay. And who did we beat in the NFC Championship to go to the Super Bowl? That's right, the Carolina Panthers. Okay, now I also believe that God has a sense of humor, but here's the last point I want people to understand. Okay, and I share this, and I wanted to really hit home on this. That if I would have stayed in that self-pity deal, feeling
Mm-hmm.
sorry for myself and blaming God and blaming and pointing fingers instead of looking in the mirror,
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe I would have missed out on God's blessing. I truly believe I would have missed out on those 2 years in Green Bay, winning a Super Bowl, having the year that we had. But no, I allowed God to be God in me, human, and listen to him instead of myself. And he blessed me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people miss out on God's blessings because they just will not let God be God in their life.
Right.
That's the main lesson. Yeah.
I totally get that. And there's so many parallels to this in agriculture and the cattle business, especially. I talk about that quite a bit in my speeches, because so often people do center their whole identity around this multi-generation family business. And if it fails, you feel like, that's why we see a lot of suicides. We see a lot of hopelessness, depression, because if things stop working, you think you're not only falling short for yourself, but for the generations that came before you and the generations that are to come. But it's like when you center yourself through Christ, well, no, my identity isn't in this business or these cattle. It is in Christ, and he will take me through highs and lows. And yeah, we can't always be in control of the outcomes, right? You have to let go and give it to God, and then good. Not that it's a prosperity gospel thing, but the Lord has good intentions for us if we're willing to be obedient and listen and humble ourselves. And so you went to Green Bay, and I know Brett Favre, everyone would know Brett. He had said, and you have this on your website, we would have never won the Super Bowl. Which one was it?
Super Bowl 31.
31 without
Yeah.
Don Beebe. What did he mean by that?
Well, what Brett meant about that was that year on a Monday night against the 49ers is in late October, I think, or mid-October. We had a big game on a Monday night against the 49ers at Lambeau. And this is another one of my stories that I share, is that you're one play away as a backup guy. And I was a third receiver at that time, so I got to play, in the games. But Robert Brooks, our star receiver, all pro receiver, went down in the very first play of the game with an ACL. Well, guess what? Next man up. That would be me. And if you're not ready spiritually, if you're not ready competitively, you can't just go through the motions and then all of a sudden that switch goes on and you're like, oh, it's Monday night, let's go. No,
Right.
you have to be ready every single day for that moment. Well, that moment for Don Beebe was that night. And because I had a great attitude and I allowed God to be God, I had the moment and I seized it. Okay. And I went in and had 11 catches for 220 yards. It's still the most yards by receiver in Lambeau history. It's still a record. And it was that game that allowed us to have home field advantage throughout the playoffs over the 49ers. And they had to come back to Lambeau in a really tough weather day. And that allowed us to get the Super Bowl. That's what Brett Favre made by that night,
Wow.
or that comment. Yeah.
So we all face pressures in life, but I can't imagine the pressure of getting ready to play in a Super Bowl. What does your prayer life look like before a night like that?
Well, it's kind of like the Leon Lett play, that Super Bowl 27. Um, before that game, I'm really, as a young boy growing up in mom and dad's backyard, my dream field was Pasadena. As a young kid, Fred Biletnikoff and Cliff Branch and Kenny Stabler playing a Super Bowl in the 70s in Pasadena. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm here. I'm living my dream. And so I remember that day, and this actually is the first devotional in the book, but I just went out and I said a quiet prayer at the 50-yard line about an hour before the game. And I said, God, more than any time in my life, let me honor your name. Let me glorify your name more than mine ever before in my life. Let this game be the game. And I kind of said prayers like that often, but this one just resonated for me for whatever reason. I mean, I got up, man, and I'm like, oh, man, I felt so good. There's no doubt I was scoring a touchdown to win the game for the Buffalo Bills, because this was our third one in a row now. But no, God gave me Leon Lett in a blow up, 52-17, running a guy down and knocking the ball out of his hands, which was completely insignificant in the world of sports and certainly for that game. But no, it meant so many things to so many people that I can honestly say today that if I would have scored the touchdown to win the Super Bowl, as great as that would have been, how many people listening to this podcast or wherever I talk on stages can relate to scoring a touchdown in a Super Bowl? Probably nobody, right?
Correct.
But how many people can relate to Leon Lett in that play of never giving up? Everybody.
Mhm.
Everybody has a moment of, do I quit or do I keep going? And it was at that moment that I knew that this was the Lord's moment. I was used that day to glorify his name more than mine,
Mhm.
because I dropped the ball in that game. That was a terrible drop. Okay. But from a spiritual standpoint, and that's going back to what Chris and I were talking about originally, it's the big picture.
Mhm.
See, the small picture is me scoring the touchdown and winning. Great. But the big picture is eternity. And I promise you, that play has touched way more people spiritually than the other one would have ever by far. Here we
Right.
are almost 30 years later and still talking about it. That's crazy.
It's
And an
humbling.
insignificant play. Yeah.
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 Wow.
So it's just another life lesson, Amanda, about just let God be God and be used by God. And he'll, even in the cattle business, if things are going tough and you love the Lord with all your heart, God is concerned with one thing really only.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's your heart. That's why he called David, King David, a man after his own heart. And you think about that for a second. And I love David's story. Here's a man that not only was he an adulteress, but he was a premeditated murderer by looking at Bathsheba and taking Bathsheba, and then not only taking Bathsheba's husband and putting him on the front line so he would get killed so David could be with her. Well, that's a pretty despicable person. But if
Right.
you read Psalms 51, this is where right after Nathan called David out and he used a parable about this is a despicable man, and everything like that. And David said, I'm going to kill that guy. And Nathan says, I'm talking about you. And Second Samuel, he's talking about, and he says, I'm talking about you, David. And it hit David hard. And so then he wrote Psalms 51, where he just poured his heart out to Christ. And that's where everybody needs to get to. God knows your heart. He's just concerned that you are living for him and just trying to be a disciple. We are a sinful nature and we sin every day.
Mhm.
God just wants to know, when you wake up in the morning and when you go to bed at night, do you love him? Are you trying to just try? Don't quit. That's all we can do in life. And God will take care of you.
Never give up. Well, this
Never.
this podcast went way too fast. I feel like I could quiz you all day. But Don, just to close out the show, where can folks follow along, hear you speak, order books, things like that?
Yeah, donbeebe.com is really the easiest way. Just go there, and my daughter did the whole website, and she's wonderful at it. I wouldn't know the first thing about it, how to even navigate through it. But to order to order that book, the devotional, it's on donbeebe.com. Six Rings from Nowhere is on there, or me speaking engagements is on there as well. But I do appreciate you having me on. And it's good to see people out there like yourself and Chris in all walks of life, just living for the kingdom and doing is his way and not ours.
We need each other definitely to keep us
Yeah.
ourselves strong and to keep doing that kingdom work. And I'm grateful to have finally met you after hearing about you for so long. I do know we have a CK6 sale coming up in August in
Yeah.
Illinois, so we're gonna have to invite you, and
Yeah.
you could bring the team along. We'll feed you some beef or
I
something,
would
and
love it.
have a good evening.
Yeah,
Well,
I would love it.
thank you so much for spending some time with us today, Don. I'm Amanda Radke for the Heart of Rural America, and we'll see you all on the Dusty Trail.